So roughly, even if you say installed capacity is about 25 to 30% renewables, in terms of actual electricity contribution to the overall mix, renewable energy's contribution is only about 9.96%. If you include hydro, as the government recently has started classifying it as a renewable resource, and to be fair, it is also a global practice that is followed, where hydro is considered as a renewable resource, just by the fact that there are no carbon emissions associated with it, unlike, say, a coal or gas. But the challenge is hydro has a lot of additional impacts, as we all know, in terms of submergence of lands and surrounding infrastructure and the impact that it has on people, the frequent requirement of desilting and also aging of dams and the risks that they pose going on in the future. So this being the situation at the moment, what are the problems that the Indian energy sector currently faces? And it's not just about the technical problems that are there. The current planning, for instance, is focused on supply. An overbuild of supply was initially expected to solve a lot of the problems. Even if you see the earlier slide where I spoke about the installed capacity, it's close to about 330 gigawatts. But the actual peak demand that we have been hitting in the last few months, the highest ever that has been recorded was, I think, 175 or 180 gigawatts. So almost 50% of the capacity is not being used. And this is because the problem has been focused on supply. We have had shortages, and therefore there was also a time when innumerable number of power plants were built in the hope that demand would just gallop at a rapid pace. But when that didn't happen, we are now facing this situation where a lot of these thermal plants especially are classified as non-performing assets. They don't find people who are ready to contract their electricity, and therefore they are not able to pay back the loans that they take. So the second problem is a lot of low quality and unreliable data. It's started to improve right now, but still, there is a significant amount of improvement that can be done. For instance, even today, if you want to actually know what is the water consumption of each of the thermal plants, it's literally impossible to find that information. You need to look at a roundabout way of estimating what is the per unit consumption of the plant, multiplied by the number of units that it generates, and arrive at a derived figure. On the other side, paradoxically, you have acute energy poverty. There is still a large number of households and people thereby who are unserved and are also underserved. Yes, there is a scheme which electrifies all the villages, but the way it was defined, automatically was not including a lot of people. The next target that had been set was household electrification. But even if that happens, and let's say you electrify each and every family, at a particular point of time, because of economic conditions or if any other factors, if they don't pay their bills and they are disconnected from the grid, does that, is that also counted, or the very fact that the connection has been given initially, is only counted to ensure that they are, fully connected to the grid? The fourth problem, and I'm sure all of you would have been reading about it, is the loss-making distribution companies. The losses run into lakhs of crores of rupees, and this has significant impacts on investment coming in, people willing to come and set up generating facilities to supply these companies. And it also starts to eat up the budgetary requirements within the state, thereby taking away money that could have gone into things like healthcare or other associated facilities. There is also a fragmented institutional setup. For instance, we have a Ministry of Power, we have a Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, we have a Ministry of Coal, we have a Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Now, logically, one would say that these are all part of an energy setup. And yes, the Minister of Power and the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy is the same. But having a more unified institutional setup would also help in more holistic planning for the country's energy requirements. And not just, and I'm, right now, while I might be speaking more from a electricity and power perspective, it also has linkages to a lot of other sectors which also need energy and a lot of these primary fuels, like I mentioned earlier about industry and transport. The next problem, in my view, is the implementation bottlenecks for RE. Yes, we have very ambitious targets, and we have actually done well. We were in the single digits of installed capacity at the beginning of this decade, but then with the targets that have been set and with the tendering mechanism and the implementation that we have reached around 92 gigawatts. But our target, and this is 2021, so by December 2022, our target was 175 gigawatts, which means in the coming year and a half, we literally need to commission and install close to 83 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity, which is a huge ask, given that on an average we have been doing around 10 gigawatts per year. The last problem is the limited focus on energy efficiency gains. Yes, there was a very large scheme called Perform, Achieve and Trade, which the Bureau of Energy Efficiency had launched, and there was also some success in terms of industries adopting that, and we saw some improvement, but still energy efficiency as a default go-to option is not there in the first place. If you go to industries, you will still find a lot of wastage of energy, and this actually means that you are actually building more than what you need. You are losing a lot of what you generate, and the old adage of energy saved is equal to 2 units generated, that definitely still holds, and we need to improve the focus on energy efficiency. And in addition, increasingly with the problems of climate change, we are also seeing that energy and climate resilience have a significant and very close relationship. So in terms of climate change and sustainability, there is a long-term energy security that is necessary for the population. But if energy security is not there and extreme weather events come in, like tornadoes or floods, destroying a lot of distribution infrastructure, that can affect your energy security. If they knock out, say, generating plants, as we saw what happened in Fukushima post the tsunami, that can also have concern. Similarly, public health concerns also would emerge. For instance, hospitals which need 24/7 electricity, if there is disruption to the electricity, because what would be the reason? But considering we are focusing on climate-related issues, that has a major impact. Similarly, economy is closely tied to energy use, and there lies the importance, and lack of access to reliable electricity can definitely affect industrial investment sentiment within the country. And of late, industries have also, lots of companies have also started signing up to a number of initiatives like Renewable Energy 100, where they want to ideally power 100% of their operations through renewable energy. And that is actually becoming a negotiating point for them as they seek to choose the state where to invest in. For example, if earlier the discussion was all about, will you provide me land at subsidized cost? Will you provide me, access to ports? So now renewable energy and how much of it the state can help pick up, I think that is also becoming very important. What are the opportunities that are there? And chronologically, if you see, I also talked about this, about electricity in all villages, which let's just accept for a moment official version that it has been achieved, which was then supplanted with the 24/7 power in all homes goal. There was also supposed to be 50 solar cities where 100% of electricity was to come from solar. Linked to it was the 100 smart cities, where renewable energy was also planned to play a major role. The big target, that is 175 gigawatts of RE by 2022, which was then updated to 450 gigawatts of RE by 2030. That still looms large, and there could be a concern that we may not achieve this target, and how do we go about it? Similarly, the classic debate about whether we need new coal plants or the existing pipeline is enough, or whether even that pipeline itself can be dismantled, and more planning towards renewables and non-fossil fuel capacity would be there. That still is going on. And the last is our target, which we have committed to in the Paris Agreement of UNFCCC in 2015, where we said that 40% of our installed capacity would be non-fossil fuel. Now, this was a 2015 commitment, but more recently, this 450 gigawatts of power by 2030 has also come in. So one needs to see how these dynamics would play out. And of late, you must have also been reading about the pressure on countries like India to announce a net zero target by a certain time period, with a number of Western countries adopting it. China also making mention of such targets. But the moot question remains whether it is applicable in a context like India, compared to Western countries which have historically used fossil fuels to grow, and whether asking India asking India to adopt such a target would actually infringe upon our development rights. But nevertheless, moving towards clean energy is important, and it's not just about carbon emissions alone that one needs to look at. But one would also need to look at the health of people. For instance, people staying nearby thermal plants, what is the health impact? What is the impact of thermal plant effluents on water bodies? What is the impact on surrounding land? So I think once you start factoring all those things in, then you start to see a balance between how much of clean energy you need. You start tending more towards clean energy, and it's also helped by the fact that batteries are becoming cheaper in over the years, and forecast to become much economically competitive in the next 4 to 5 years. So based on these opportunities, I'll try to also talk about what we need to do as a country. One is learning to operate our systems with increasing share of variable renewable energy within our system. So if you see this graph, you'll find that there are runaway leaders like Denmark, for instance, who operate their system with a large share of renewables. And sometimes you also read news reports that countries like Germany, UK, run for so many days without burning thermal plants. But we also need to keep in mind that this is a result of a lot of system integration across Europe, and particularly in Scandinavian countries. The availability of hydro across the region has played a significant role. And a lot of these countries have also, and continental transmission linkage is also something which cannot be written off lightly, and it has played a role in increasing this PRE. So that way, if you take a look at Indian states alone as a region, you'll find that Tamil Nadu as a state is also there as one among the leaders. There was a report on this by an organization called IEEE, Institute for Energy, Environment and Finance Affairs. I can share the link later on, where they looked at Tamil Nadu state as a particular region and found that it was one among the top 10 or 15 global countries / regions. So that kind of approach is also there. The idea is to see how we can take this across the whole country. There are states which do not have renewable resources, which say Tamil Nadu or Karnataka or Maharashtra has. And we are also a large country with a lot of features similar to that of a transcontinental landmass. So, inter-regional state connections, transfer of power across states, I think that will definitely be of great. Secondly, and this is reiterating a point I made earlier about energy efficiency gains being recognized. We have taken initial steps within the industrial segment, and a lot of large companies have also signed up to what is known as Energy Productivity 100. So similar to the initiative that I mentioned earlier about Renewable Energy 100, there are a lot of companies who have also signed up to Energy Productivity 100, by which they commit to bringing in a lot of energy efficiency to improve their productivity within their systems. Now, I think the focus now needs to shift to medium, small, and SMEs, as we call them, because they are the backbone of the Indian economy and contribute a lot to our GDP, and the energy consumption by this segment is also significantly high. So helping these companies also move towards more efficient manufacturing processes, covering them with a lot of clean energy, I think that is going to be the key. So what I have done here is to list out a set of interventions where I think innovation is critical, and given the audience that I'm talking to, a lot of this would also tie in with your coursework and possibly your plans for the future. But I'll caveat this by saying that this is just my views. There will of course be a lot of things that I have not been able to cover here, and there would also be things that I'm sure you know about those things, but happy to discuss them. But just to take you through these a few points that I have listed out. Again, the first 2 points about prosumer revolution, and energy access via microgrids. Prosumers, as I'm sure you're all familiar with, is a form of is a variation on the earlier consumer mode, wherein you were just consuming electricity from the grid, but now with your rooftop solar systems, you can also provide electricity to the grid going forward. So this is right now heavily dependent on rooftop solar, and going forward, this was also expected to play a significant role in India's electricity consumption. And in fact, the 100 gigawatt solar target that the country had assigned, we were expecting about 40 gigawatts to come in through rooftop solar. So this is, as I was mentioning, this is heavily dependent on rooftop solar. A lot of states have announced rooftop solar policies, but as you would have seen, and I don't know if any of you have also tried installing rooftop solar at your homes, the process literally drains any interest that one would have, and also the economics are heavily skewed towards the distribution company. The rules are also such that you cannot put in the capacity that you may want. You will have to restrict it to a level below your contracted capacity with the utility. So a lot of tariff and regulatory related issues are hampering growth in this sector. And of course, the issue of whether these panels themselves are efficient and can efficiency levels be improved, that is definitely there, and improvements in solar cell manufacturing and material science is going to definitely help in the improvement of efficiency and hopefully make it more economic for consumers. And in terms of resilience, a lot of rooftop solar systems in the past have proved to support, especially during the Chennai floods of 2015. There were households which had rooftop solar. They were able to charge a lot of mobile phones for first responders and emergency services. So that way, the resilience aspect of rooftop solar is also now, in terms of energy access via microgrids, initially, before the grid expansion became a very key feature of the Indian electricity landscape, islanded microgrids were something which were supplying a lot of villages. Over time, the learning has also come that it is not either grid or off-grid technologies, but something which at some point will interface with each other and switch modes of operation depending on the requirement. The challenge again with a remote operation of these microgrids has been the O&M. So possibly could modular solar plus storage boxes, I mean, for lack of a better word, be something which would help them, switch in and switch out 40 units rather than someone having to, and just again taking the example of states like Jharkhand or Assam, where we also work with a number of primary healthcare centers. That can be taken for a technician to travel with material across kilometers, across inhospitable terrain. For example, there are lots of communities in Assam which are cut off during the monsoon because of the Brahmaputra River. Their dependence is only on, for healthcare, for instance, is through solar boats which visit them once in a while. So challenges like this are there in these remote areas, and we need to also keep cognizance of them. The third opportunity is definitely in the electric or hybrid vehicles, especially with the rise of V2G technologies and with the dropping battery costs. This is also going to be a great demand growth in the future. We've already seen affordable cars starting to hit the market, scooters like Ather, for instance, and we also are seeing a lot of companies like Ola also coming in with these mega factories for manufacturing of electric two-wheelers. So this is definitely going to be a key area of growth. But in terms of what impacts it would have on the power sector, it's definitely on the distribution grid impacts. That is key for utilities in terms of understanding where this network growth is likely to come up and at what point of time, and at what point do they also need to start planning network upgrades. So that's definitely an area of research. And this is where a lot of the smart grid technologies will also come in, analyzing data on existing EV locations, understanding what load growth patterns are, forecasting possibly network switching technologies, isolating transformers which may be getting overloaded. I think a lot of these parameters would also start to come in. Energy efficiency is another area which I really like to keep emphasizing most of the time. It's there in industries to some extent. Now, how do we get it into households in terms of home energy management systems? We have Microsoft's Home, we have Google Nest, but again, whether they'll become mainstream, whether the privacy concerns can be addressed, I think that will prove to be a significant factor. I also feel that water, energy, and food nexus would assume great significance, especially if you take the first part about water and energy, impacts of water shortages on thermal plant operations. We have about 40% of our country's thermal plants are dependent on fresh water for cooling. Now, in a situation where droughts are more likely, what will happen to their operations? Similarly, if you also bring in the food nexus, you must have all read about this solarization of agriculture through a scheme called KUSUM, Kisan Urja Suraksha Uddham Abhiyan. I forget the abbreviation. So the aim is to solarize a large chunk of irrigation pump sets and avoid DISCOMs having to supply power to farmers, thereby reducing subsidy burden. I think that is also going to be a crucial area of interventions, but it needs a lot of planning, because if you just let things be as such, there would be no incentive for preventing overuse of groundwater, which will have further impacts going down the line. The next area which I also feel needs intervention is about cooling. As temperatures are going to rise, and with a lot of our building stock not yet built, how much of cooling are we able to provide due to better design of buildings, better use of material, more energy efficient air conditioning? I think that's another important area of research. Combating air pollution, either through putting in more renewables or finding solutions which would knock the pollutants out before they are released into the air. That's going to be key, but these solutions need to come out fast, because there is already a significant chunk of population that is suffering the impacts of air pollution within our country. Integrating RE into our grids, I spoke about that earlier, and making our grid smarter is the only way. How do we forecast the amount of renewables that are going to come on? Are you able to make corrections to system operation? Are your thermal plants, able to readjust their technical minimum and ramp up and ramp down to meet the demand requirements? So that's again one other area of work. But the last three that I have listed out are more recent and could possibly hold the key to Indian industry also dominating. One is, of course, hydrogen. This has been recognized in the recent union budget with a national hydrogen mission proposed to be set up. It has uses across power sector, across industry, in terms of cleaner fuels usage. Instead of coking coal, can it be used as a reducing agent for steel? And of course, in transport, where can it come as a competitor to electric vehicles through the fuel cell use? So that is definitely an area which we should watch out, and hopefully we will go beyond missions and visions and actually put in place a very strong industrial infrastructure. And it's also becoming a key area of competitiveness across countries, with countries putting a lot of money, just like they did with solar and storage, into hydrogen research, pilots, and trying to better the electrolyzer technologies. That is going to be the key. And I should just add, it shouldn't just be saying hydrogen, it is actually green hydrogen. That is where electrolysis process is powered by renewables. So I think that holds significant key to the future. And the last one is, of course, offshore wind. India has a long coastline, and right now studies have indicated about 30,000 megawatts of feasibility across the Tamil Nadu and the Gujarat coasts. But again, we are still in planning and piloting mode, whereas we see countries like Denmark, US, Taiwan already having large-scale offshore wind farms. Again, a lot of their industries themselves have entered into direct agreements with these offshore wind farms to produce electricity. We have already set up industrial base for wind. Of course, that caters to onshore wind farms, and the offshore technology is a little more demanding. So that's something we need to work on, and hopefully we'll build on this. The last 2 points that I will talk about are what was also suggested to me in the mail when we were discussing the topic, is about nuclear and geothermal. So as we have seen earlier, nuclear has fairly stayed a constant, and again, there are multiple factors why nuclear is not picking up. One is the gestation period for these plants, the costs that are there. Most of the projects across the world we are finding are overshooting their costs, and they are also becoming renewables are much competitive than nuclear. So one of the definitive advantages, yes, is that nuclear is clean, doesn't emit emissions like CO2, but people are also worried about the safety risks. So I think that's a big perception problem nuclear has to overcome. Of course, there is literature available about small modular nuclear reactors, which institutions like MIT are working on. How quickly can we make them feasible? How safe can we make them? And how do they overcome the entry barriers? I think that's going to be a major challenge for nuclear. And geothermal, again, the potential and the geographic focus, in my view, and happy to be corrected here, I feel it's only restricted to to states like Himachal and Uttarakhand in some of the regions with which they are there. So in terms of scale, whether it will hit what we need as a country across to meet our requirements, I think that's a key question that geothermal would have to answer. So there are lots more that I could discuss, but I'll stop for now, and maybe we should have a round of discussions to see whether you have views on this or you have additional questions. So thank you for your time and patience. Happy to discuss.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now, if anybody has any questions, they can unmute themselves and ask. So or even write in the chat box.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. My name is Amog. I'm from the Electrical and Electronics Engineering department. So I have two questions. My first question is, so I met a friend. He was a petroleum engineer, but he worked at Morgan Stanley, which is an asset management company. What role does he play in that field at all? So there was this question in my head, and I wasn't able to sort it out. So I'm asking you that now.
Okay. Okay. So institutions like Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, a lot of these trading, they have a lot of money invested in the trading business. So the way fossil fuels, especially oil, is traded is, one is of course the physical contracts where, let's say, India enters into agreement with Saudi Arabia for so many million barrels of oil per month or per year. That's one kind of physical delivery contract. But there's also a significant financial component to these oil markets, where the Brent crude, the Texas Intermediate, then the Dubai crude. They're all the present as well as the future. The future contracts. I mean, just like how you have future contracts in your commodity markets and shares, even there is a financial element in these oil markets also. So predicting, prices depending on supply demand equilibrium. Let's say, what would be the impact of war in Iran, for example, on oil production? What will be the likely impact on prices? So there is a significant chunk of experts working on the financial markets, especially related to oil, derivatives, oils, and future contracts. And a lot of these would also need technical inputs in understanding plans that countries put out in terms of oil extraction and all that. So that may be where your friend is working. If his or her role is using the petroleum engineering knowledge, but they also have an understanding of the financial market, possibly they are involved in the trading desk also.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. The second question is, I mean, it's been proven that nuclear energy is fairly clean and safe to set up and use, apart from the occasional accidents here and there. But even though it's safe and clean, why is Germany decommissioning all the nuclear plants?
Okay, so this is a a very difficult question for any energy planner to answer, and Germany's view has been criticized. So I would actually say 50% criticism, 50% support is what is there for Germany. So Germany took this decision in the light of the Fukushima disaster, where they saw the tidal waves engulf the nuclear plant, and risk of and radiation leakages from that. In fact, recently Japan also announced that they're going to release all that water into the ocean in some time. So that's just a piece of information, but that's the context in which Germany took that decision. Now, as you rightly said, it is clean, no doubt. It doesn't release pollutants. It doesn't release carbon dioxide. But once you see an accident, once you see its impact, people have read about Chernobyl. They have seen what happened because of Chernobyl. There was a near miss in the US called the 3 Mile reactor incident. So that definitely, and it's like, if you were to ask someone whether they are afraid of an aeroplane crash or a car crash, it is more likely that they'll say that an aeroplane crash is what scares them the most. Though it is statistically, if you see, the chances of someone passing away in an aeroplane crash is much lesser than a car crash. But because the incident has such a huge magnitude, it's reported upon with great detail. There is the bias and fear which is there in the minds of people. But associated with that, in the Indian context, you also have the problem of land acquisition for this nuclear plant. So you must have read about the protests in Kudankulam, the Chirikapur. So it wasn't just about safety; it was also fear that lands would be taken away, compensation would not be done in a fair and honorable manner. And unfortunately, the past instances in which industries have also operated have also not provided significant encouragement. People have been cheated of their land; they haven't been compensated. If they have been given some compensation or resettlement, it has been in, say, a very barren or rocky area. People are also tied emotionally to the way of life. For instance, the area which you grow, the customs and tradition which you follow, it's difficult to push anyone away for that matter for this. So in India, I would say these challenges are also there. And lastly, costs are also playing a huge role in nuclear. If you see one of the most recent examples that has been cited is the Finkley nuclear plant in UK, which was supposed to come in and provide a big energy boost, but it's overshooting its targets a lot. Costs have ballooned significantly, and in the meantime, people are also seeing that renewables and battery costs are falling. So the question is, with all this unknown and with all these challenges, why take a risk? I think that's a big role in why nuclear is not picking up as fast as it should.
Thank you so much for your answer, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
So I have a query. So I'm studying electrical engineering, and I think a lot of people here are from Department of EEE itself. So like, what are the future career prospects for like EEE engineers in the field of clean energy in India? So it's a developing field, or what exact roles we can take up in the future in the clean energy field, if you can like.
Okay. So again, a variety of opportunities are opening up both in the established as well as the startup space. Now, if this were a country like any of the European countries or US, I would also not hesitate to add the utilities themselves. But in India, most of the utilities are state-owned, and even if joining there does have its benefits, but innovation and all can definitely get stymied. But a lot of private utilities are also operating in India. For example, you have BSES Rajdhani, BSES Yamuna in Tata Power in Delhi. Similarly, Tata Power, Adani in Bombay. You also have Calcutta Electricity Supply Corporation in Calcutta. Then I think Torrent Power in Surat and Ahmedabad. So a lot of limited private presence within the Indian market, and these companies, they are a good option for you to consider. Now that's one. Similarly, you also have on the supplier side a lot of solar and wind companies who need engineering talent to help them design and set up the plants that they may win bids for to supply. And these go out into megawatts of capacity. Similarly, you have the consulting organizations like Parsons Brinkerhoff, you have Atkins, a lot of these technical consulting companies who help industries and the project developers to design their projects. The world is increasingly becoming interesting. You have companies that help a lot of project developers operate their wind farm. For instance, helping them with the forecasting of their wind and solar assets, helping them understand what will be the financial impacts of missing out on so many megawatts of generation. What happens if you overcommit generation or undercommit without forecasting properly? And that's one way. Secondly, a lot of energy analytics also companies have started coming in. For example, there is Minion Energy, which uses a lot of embedded systems and artificial intelligence to do this energy mapping of industrial facilities and commercial facilities, help them develop energy saving strategies. And of late, a lot of startups have also started coming up in the electric charging space. The electric vehicle market is also picking up. So opportunities are definitely more varied than whatever, but it's also pretty competitive to access the market, which is dominated by state-owned distribution companies.
Sir, I have a question. I'm again from
Yes,
EEE
please.
department. Yeah,
Yes,
is there a
please.
possible way for us to become more energy efficient instead of finding means to produce more energy for us?
So definitely yes, and in fact, if you see our efficiency journey, we are much more further down the road than what we were maybe 5 years back. For instance, again, I'm not sure that, or rather, I'm actually sure that most of the lighting in your houses would be through LEDs. Of course, there would be legacy tube lights and incandescent bulbs. Maybe maybe the next time you want to replace one of these assets, you would definitely look for LEDs. Now the LED story is very important in India. So there's this company called Energy Efficiency Services Limited, which helped crash the prices of LEDs to what we are seeing right now. They did a huge bulk tender, procured lakhs and millions of these LEDs, distributed them across cities to households. And what was retailing at about 700 to 900 rupees per bulb, you now get varieties even in the hundreds or the 200s of rupees. So that way, on the LED lighting front, we have achieved a lot. I would encourage you to also visit this website called Ujala, where they keep track of how many LEDs they have sold, and associated with that, how much energy they have saved, how much carbon emissions have been avoided. Now that is one part of the story. Now there is also a appliance labeling and energy efficiency program. So all the fridges, TVs that you see in the market come with that 5-star rating, which wasn't there before. But now you find that people are also cognizant about energy efficiency, and they're looking for these higher star rated equipment. Though the weak link, in my view, is the salesperson in your electronic showrooms who tries to sell you his old stock by telling you that, what's the point of saving 50 to 100 rupees a month? You're anyway spending so much on a fridge. I think once that mentality is also overcome, we'll be able to push more energy efficient equipment into the market. I think much more awareness among people would definitely help in sales of these equipment, and pushing these standards across equipment categories would also be key. And in industries now, they've also started looking at motor replacement programs where they replace old motors with a lot of energy efficient ones. Agricultural pump sets are being replaced with energy efficient ones, but the scale is so staggering and large in India that you need something like the LED program to really achieve scale. But efforts are going on.
Thank you on that, sir. I also had another question with the previous discussion on nuclear energy. You mentioned about Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island incident, which were one of the reasons for few of the European countries to stop developing more nuclear plants. How likely are those incidents to occur again in newer nuclear plants that are being set up now or in the future?
So difficult to say, because each time there has been an accident, safety standards have been upgraded. But it just needs one incident to cause havoc. So you might design with the highest factor of safety, but for example, if there is some natural disaster which it just exceeds the threshold of your factor of safety by a little bit, that alone is enough to cause a significant problem. So and it's also a balance. The more factor of safety you start to build in, your costs also start ballooning significantly. So, and for a plant operator, designer, and engineer, it's always a balance of safety versus economics, because you can make it a guaranteed a safe product, but then your costs have gone so much that the power that you produce is very costly, and there will be no one to pay. So it is a tricky balance game. Standards are there, they also have to be updated regularly as incidents happen. And it's unfortunate that we have to learn from tragedies, but it's a way of life that's there. And also on the topic related to Germany phasing out nuclear plants, the irony is that they are part of a European grid, which is significantly powered by a lot of nuclear plants in France and Czechoslovakia. So it's not that they have given up on nuclear power entirely. It's only nuclear power within their borders is what they have committed to dismantle.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I had one more query, sir. What is exactly WRI India's role in this clean energy field? Like, what exactly is the work that, if you can?
Okay. So we are a research organization, and we work mostly on the policy and sort of implementation space. So we take inputs from technical studies and work with governments, private sector in trying to bring in a lot of these initiatives on ground. So just to give you an example, one of the things that we are working on is helping companies increase their share of renewable energy. So for that, what we need to do is to work with, I'm sure you all know that companies nowadays have sustainability offices which look at how sustainable the company can be in terms of energy, water consumption, resource usage, etc. So in line with, again, a lot of targets that companies are taking, one of the things is they want to increase share of renewable energy within their energy mix. So we work with those sustainability officers in developing strategies across locations where they are there, depending on the state's rules and regulations, help them understand how much they can do at this point of time. Then try to work with them and the local government in order to modify rules, bring in more awareness about how their renewable energy shares can come in. So that's one kind of work that we do. Second type of work that we do is working with a lot of primary healthcare centers, schools in remote areas, solarizing them and improving their resilience to energy shortages and climate risks. We also work with a lot of governments in developing strategies for their energy transitions. So, for instance, we are working with Tamil Nadu on a multi-pronged approach in looking at how they can improve finances of their distribution company, how they can implement the solar agricultural scheme, how they can plan for a future with more electric vehicles. So multiple efforts like this, but mostly focused on the policy and implementation and across governments, private sectors, and also work with a number of other partners on the ground and try to move things on.
Okay, sir. One last query, sir. For a individual to move into a clean energy or be conscious about clean energy. Presently, we all feel that solar is the best option for a small family or to start off with, because they can set up solar panels on their roofs and start off with lighting their home. So is there any other clean energy resource or something which as an individual they can start off, or solar is the best option in the present scenario?
So right now, in terms of electricity, solar is your best bet, given that it's modular and available, and there are suppliers also in the market. Small wind turbines, I understand, are picking up, but they are, more preferred by individual industrial units. Biogas and waste to energy is the third best option that I can think of. Maybe local small size generators within apartment complexes, maybe using the bio waste that is produced, producing biogas and using that to electrify some of their, maybe common area, instead of, reduce your diesel generation, diesel genset consumption. So I think these are immediate ways that one could think of, but ultimately it's a system-wide challenge, and you will definitely need your local distribution company to also support in this. For example, what Tata Power in Bombay has done recently is it has opened up a tariff category called green tariff for all consumers. So if you sign up to that and pay about, I think, 60 paise extra per unit. Every unit of electricity that you consume in your house or office or industry is certified as green electricity. So I think and what Tata Power would do is, with the increased demand for this, they would be able to contract large-scale solar and wind and those kinds of assets, and that's how it should build up. But yes, you're right. At an individual household level, I think solar is your best bet for the moment.
Yes, sir. So basically, is it like not necessarily in the near future, but then in is it possible for the world to like sustain on 100% renewable energy? Is that feasible, sir? Like considering all the other factors, is that possible?
I think it should be, but it has to be a sort of you will definitely need a transition to happen. For instance, right away you cannot do away with fossil fuels. And lot of, in fact, even the manufacture of solar and wind generating assets right now relies on a lot of fossil fuel. So the power that comes in to operate those factories may also contain a lot of electricity powered by fossil fuels. Now, in resource-wise, it is definitely feasible, but how soon and how extensive will depend a lot on technological advancements. For instance, with batteries, how much does costs fall down? But at the same time, the problem that comes in if you start manufacturing more and more batteries is the materials that you will need for it. There are rare earths that you may need from sensitive areas like Bolivia. There are metals that you may need from war zones like Congo. So, in the quest for clean energy, what are the other problems that are coming up? So, alongside, getting all these clean energy enabling things in place, we should also start building in things like recycling so that you can take out materials from existing assets, minimize further resource usage from them. So, definitely possible, but needs committed effort with all countries and all stakeholders in the world. But difficult to put in a time frame at the moment, but definitely it's not impossible. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. I'm from ECE department, and I just recently read about a new kind of solar panel being developed, which runs on UV rays, and rather than the ones which we regularly use. And it's a transparent one, and they also claim that it is made from green materials like vegetable peels and etc. What's your view on this? Like, can this be, how do you think will it be more profitable than the regular solar panels that we are currently using?
Okay, so regular panels that we use currently, in India at least, a lot of it is imported. It either comes from China, Taiwan, or places, and and the end of its lifespan, we still haven't reached that phase yet. But once projects which were contracted in 2010, 2011, once they complete their 25-year cycle by 2035 or 2040, that's when you're going to face a mountain of these solar panels. And if we have not our recycling technologies, then it's another disaster which is going to hit us. So, I would be welcoming of any new technology. Definitely, technology should continue to disrupt. And if this particular one that you speak of with vegetable peels, for instance, and it can operate with UV rays, which could possibly mean that you're not just reliant on light. There are also other UV sources which can trigger the photovoltaic mechanism. I think it should be something we look at, but that's where the role of technology incubators, your angel investors in growing this ecosystem and helping it reach commercial operations. Because unless any technology reaches a stage where you can commercially compete against existing technologies, nobody would take it up. And that's another bittersweet reality that how much ever people would want to go into to being sustainable, unless it makes economic sense. Literally nobody. Maybe there might be 0.1, 0.2% who would go for it despite the cost, but unless it's competitive commercially, nobody is going to look at that. So getting it to that commercial competitive stage is important.
Thank you, sir, for being with us today and giving a lot of insight into India's clean energy scenario and answering all our doubts regarding it, and also speaking about the opportunities in the future as students, what opportunities we'll get in the clean energy field and stuff.